maneco64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. It's almost 6 p.m. London, or 1 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time in the US. I haven't done a video today, but I've decided to do a live stream, just a chat with the viewers, also the usual Q&A. I also want to talk about JPMorgan. They've come out with an interesting 10 years after the financial crisis report, and they've said some really interesting things that I want to go over. So just waiting for people to come on. We've got 15 people already. Stephen Hanifi is here. Good evening, Stephen. Nice to see you here. These nuts Sunday fun day. What's good, Mario? Morning, evening. Any updates on Sweden's election? Well, I don't think the results have come out yet. It's going to be important, that election as well. Usually Swedish politics isn't important, but it is getting more important because of what's going on there domestically in terms of the immigration. I think they've had 600,000 people immigrate into a country of 10 million. A lot of unhappiness, and the populists are growing in popularity in Sweden. Edward Ryan from Long Island, New York. Good afternoon, Edward. Deceive No More is here. Capitalism. Good evening. Based Lados. Peter from London. Mike L. Hello, Mike. So I'll just wait a little longer. I want to talk about a few things. This JPMorgan report I saw in one of the stories in Silver Doctor, and I went into the actual JPMorgan report, and I'll put the link here for you guys on the chat. I'll just copy it and paste it if you want to have a look at that. I mean, one of the things that they admit in the report is that the taxpayer bailed out the bankers, and I've you know, a lot of times you tell that to people, they don't believe it, but it's coming from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And I'll read it here from their report. It's not the whole report because I think you need to be a client to get the whole thing, but you can get you can look at a lot of stuff. So here on section 3, it says lessons learned. 10 years ago, the financial crisis was fully exposed. Governments around the world invested, they call it invested taxpayers' money to save banks from failure. Central banks were forced to use unconventional monetary policy to prop up markets, and regulators stepped in to try and ensure that a liquidity crisis of that scale could not take place again. Interesting that they say that governments invested taxpayers' money to save the banks. I wouldn't say is an investment, a very good investment. The other thing they said is that central bankers were forced to use unconventional monetary policy, excuse me, which is a euphemism for saying, well, central banks created money out of nothing to buy these, loans that were given by us to the U.S. government, so they could take those loans and use it to buy, shore up banks' balance sheets. So there you have it, JPMorgan admitting that. Let's see, OG, what's your take on the U.S. mints don't have any more silver? Well, it's not that they don't have any more silver. There's silver, out there in the market. It's just that they've probably been told by the U.S. Treasury not to buy any more silver because the silver market must be very tight, and that's what I've heard from some reports on King World News and other places, that there's a lot of backwardation in the futures market. What that means is that you can you can sell in the spot market for a higher price than in the future. So it's like arbitrageurs. What they do is they buy silver futures 3 months forward for a price that's less than the price in the spot market. So it's like a certain how can I say profit. And what that means is that there's a lot of demand for physical. And that's usually there's a contango in the spot price and the futures price. The futures price is always higher than the spot price. So that's why probably the US Mint, they haven't, yeah, they've run out of silver, but they're not buying anymore because they've probably been told not to, because the situation is very tight. The other thing that could be the reason for that is that silver, as many of you know, is one of the most important industrial commodities in a war. A lot of weaponry of war needs silver. So, you know, there's been a lot of talk recently about Syria, the chemical attacks. People have been warning them about it, even though I don't think the Assad government is doing that. So that's the other reason why. Maybe they know something we don't. By the way, I've got my End the Fed t-shirt today, just to let you guys know. Billy's here as well. So I hope that answers your question. Gur OG is in northern Norway. I had a few clients in Norway when I worked in the city, in the futures market. Yeah, we did a lot of business with Norway. Very nice people, the Norwegians, at least the ones I worked with. Metallic miner, if JPMorgan don't short the silver market again, we'll see silver skyrocket. Well, there's been a lot of speculation. I think it was Bix Weir said that this Friday, the how can I say, the silver market was going to start shooting up. It didn't. It did outperform gold a little bit after the non-farm payroll number, but we didn't see anything unusual. A tenth of an ounce of silver used to be a Roman's daily pay. That's the other thing. You know, people keep going. There's a lot of you know, people saying or writing about how millennials don't care for precious metals anymore, that they don't, you know, gold and silver will never come back. And I think that's wrong and it's misguided. And I think that's why we need to keep letting people know that gold and silver have been and will always be sound money, you know, have been for thousands of years and will always be. And I think once the precious metals market start waking up in terms of price, all the interest will flow into precious metals. I mean, even when I started looking into gold, gold was around $300, and people thought I was crazy. They said, "Well, gold's dead. That gold's never going to come back," you know. And everything was like it was the same back then. People said, and it was the same in the I remember late '80s, early '90s. When the gold market was going nowhere, they said, well, gold and silver are dead. And I think even, what's his name, Milton Friedman, who was supposed to be a free market guy, but he believed in the Federal Reserve, go figure. He said when gold was taken out of the financial monetary system in Bretton Woods, 1971, 73, he said that all the need for gold would be, there would be no more need for gold, and that the price could actually go to zero. How wrong was Milton Friedman? And that was back in the mid-70s. So I wanted to say that as well. I think people will be mistaken to believe that gold and silver are dead in terms of being forms of money. Am I saying cryptocurrencies are not going to do anything? I think cryptocurrencies have a space in the free market for currencies, but I think ultimately gold and silver will be the place to be. One thing that I think they should do, if we do go back to some kind of gold standard, is that we shouldn't call coins, $10 or £10 or 10 francs. It should be that by the weight, like grams. 1 gram of gold, 2 grams, 5 grams, 20 grams, so that there's no way that they can, devalue or debts. Because if you give an ounce of gold, call it $100, you can always make that ounce of gold become $200. But an ounce of gold will always be an ounce of gold. So we should maybe go to a system where we pay for things by the gram. Then there's no way that they can corrupt the currency. Gerolji, what about Thursday? 9/11 heard. Tuesday, you mean? I think Tuesday is going to be 9/11, isn't it? Heard a rumor that maybe we'll pull up a NIMP, EMP, I think. Yeah, attack. I think that Janda who said that, can't remember first name. Yeah, I'm actually haven't finished watching. It's this video here. He's done an interview with Greg Hunter. I still haven't gotten to that part where he says there's an EMP attack. I'll put the link to the video here. I don't know. I think things politically, even though I try not to cover too much politics, but in this case, I'll touch upon it. Oh, thank you, Susan Chappell, for the super chat donation. I'll touch upon it. I think there's a raging civil war going on in the U.S. between the deep state, the mainstream media, even the technology companies. They're in the deep state's camp, the mainstream media, and on the other side you've got President Trump. Something's going on there, and it's quite worrying. I would like to say as well that I think it's wrong what they've done to InfoWars and Alex Jones, banning them and censoring them. Some people say, well, Twitter and Facebook and YouTube are private companies. But according to Alex Jones, they actually, the law, federal law, is that they act as like public squares, so that they don't have any liability for what people say or write on these platforms. So they're not supposed to be publishers. They're not supposed to be censoring. And I agree with that. And I think this is not just about Alex Jones, and it's about everyone that has an alternative view, like me, or I'm not really right or left. I'm more of a libertarian. But the other thing is, according to Alex Jones, he thinks the left is trying to silence the alternative and the people who helped Donald Trump get elected. And why are they doing that now? Well, it's because you have in under 60 days, you have the midterm elections. So a lot can happen politically, a lot of instability. I saw as well on Friday that President Trump is looking to put $200 billion more of tariffs on China. So that's another thing. Let's see. Was McCain executed? Max Ma77XX. Well, apparently not apparently. There's a John Kasich, the governor of Ohio. He went on CNN, and he actually said they put John McCain to death. Now they've come out and said that he meant they put John McCain to rest. It's very different, isn't it, to say someone was put to rest and to say that someone was put to death. I don't know. Apparently, President Trump, he came out in December. Thank you, Gur Olji, for your Norwegian krona donation. I appreciate it. And you're welcome. So yeah, John Kasich. So there are a lot of people out because President Trump, how can I say, he signed an executive order last year in December about corruption and national emergency, and then in March he signed another how can I say, executive order about military tribunals in times of peace. I guess we're not in times of peace. And the other interesting thing, I was listening to the hearing of Judge Brett Kavanaugh in Congress, his hearing to get confirmed as a Supreme Court justice. And Lindsey Graham, who is a very good friend of McCain, started asking him about whether the U.S. was under kind of martial law and whether U.S. civilians could be tried and executed through military courts. And Brett Kavanaugh agreed that they can right now. So everything is in place for these courts, military tribunals, not just for foreigners, but also Americans that are considered to have been, how can I say, acting in a treasonous manner. So it's very interesting. Jubilee, yeah, I mean, I think, Dr. David Genda thinks that there's going to be a rule of law reset, that's Susan Chappell asking, and a monetary reset. And in terms of reset, I was looking at this book again. I really recommend it if you can get a hold of this, The Triumph of Gold by Dr. Franz Pick. You probably find it on eBay or Amazon. Not sure how much it is, but he talks about how these devaluations and resets usually happen like after, from a Friday evening to a Sunday night. So if you're not prepared, you can't act on it because all the banks will be closed. And by the time it comes to Monday, it will be too late. So Joseph Mueller, servicing IQ, there will be no EMP, number one, a stretch. The thing about the EMP, it would be a disaster for everyone, even the people in charge, because the internet and the electronics and the computers are so ubiquitous today that you need it. I'm not sure. Of course, there's always talk about that, EMP. Joseph Miller, I believe in gold. Do you know how gold behaved in past financial crisis? 18th, 19th century. Was gold itself ever in a bubble? Since not before 1971, there was no bubble really in gold. Gold usually, like I think it was just after the Civil War in the U.S., there was a crisis in New York, and the price of gold went to like $180 an ounce, even though gold was fixed back then around $20.67 an ounce. So yeah, bubble, not really. A bubble more in the fiat system. I guess you could argue gold, gold and silver, they're a bubble, but more to do with fear, I would say. Stock market bubbles are more to do with greed. But yeah, it's possible that it does get overbought, gold. Paul Democrito. Hey, Paul, how are you? Nice to see you here. So 18th and 19th century, does that crisis. I think it was the Gould, Jay Gould, Gould, a banker in New York, and gold soared. And I think, it's usually, you could say there's a bubble in gold when currencies collapse. Those currencies become worthless and gold becomes priceless. That's what happens. Let's see here. Susan Chappell, I'm just watching BBC video on the great stock market crash. I wasn't aware that people bought stocks on credit. Oh yeah, a lot of the speculators, they do it all on on margin. That's what debt is, margin. So you've got £1,000 in your account, but you can buy £10,000 worth of stock. So yeah, most people are like that, speculators. A lot of people do. Not long-term investors. They, they park their money, but a lot of it is like that. Derivatives as well is always on margin. Thank you, Jane Reynolds. Should one change silver for gold? Um, I think right now, if anything, I would want to be changing a little bit of gold for silver, even though I don't even think people should get rid of their gold. But if you are going to buy precious metals, maybe favor silver a little more, because I think silver will outperform. Bitcoin is the pin in the fiat bubble. Maybe. Robert Cowan, Mario, what would cause the US dollar to collapse as a result of all the worldwide currency failures? Well, the dollar is at the center of the whole system. It will be the last one standing. But, in this book, Franz Pick calls the dollar the mini dollar. The dollar has lost 98% of its value since the Federal Reserve was created, and they've turned it into a fiat currency. I guess it takes longer for the last 1% to go completely. But I think it will be what will drive the dollar down as well, is maybe after all these currencies become worthless, maybe the people in those countries who have dollars are going to start selling the dollar as well. Difficult to say. It will be, I think, dollar crisis will be, how can I say, it will come from abroad, because there's a lot more dollars physically, I think, abroad than there are in the United States. So when foreigners, and I think it's the dollar's been collapsing, in slow motion and gradually. So I guess what we're waiting for is for the final collapse. A lot of the other fiat currencies, they go a lot quicker. Like, Brazil has had 3 currencies or 4 in the last 60 years, Argentina as well. But the dollar, looks good because it's the best of a bad lot, I would say. Rumors, reports China and Russia will stop using the petrodollar. Well, they're already starting not to use the petrodollar. They're doing a lot of trade with their own currencies, the ruble and the yuan. The Chinese have opened the oil exchange where you can trade oil in yuan. So yeah, it's starting, and I think they're also going to have the LME is going to price their contracts in Hong Kong, I think, in yuan. Oh, Jane Reynolds, sorry, meant to change gold to silver. I would. That's definitely I mean, that's what I mean, Jane. I think that's what you meant. Yeah, 84 is very high. It's like at the way at the end of the bell curve of probability, 84 to 1. And the Fed, yeah, I think, if the Fed was, because a lot of people also say, oh, it's okay to have central banks as long as you have sound money. That may be true, but we have fiat money, and if it wasn't for the Fed, they wouldn't have been able to bail out the banks in 2009, because the Fed just created money out of thin air to buy that debt that we had to give the government so they could save the banks. Wouldn't have been able to do that without a central bank that can create money out of nothing. Thank you, Rick2624, for the super chat donation. Paul Democritou, my personal opinion is that silver will not outperform gold. There are very simple reasons for this no one's talking about. Well, historically, in a precious metals bull market, silver goes on steroids, so to speak, because silver is consumed. So there's not as much silver above ground as there is gold above ground. Almost 99.9% of all the gold that's ever been mined in history is still out there. Silver, it's besides being money, it's also used as it's consumed as a commodity. HP, hi Maneco, can you make 2 different video series, one covering top 20 coins you recommend collecting and another on your top 20 books? Thanks, appreciate all your videos. Yeah, that's a good idea, HP. I will look into that. Oh, you're welcome, Jane. No problem. Capitalism. Weren't there rumors that the Saudis were going to trade oil exclusively for gold? Would that not be the downfall of the petrodollar? It would be, but I think then it would probably be the end of the Saudi royal family. They'd be gone like overnight if they did that. And why is that? Well, because the Americans protect the Saudis. So if the Saudis did that, unless the Saudi royal family had the support of China and Russia, maybe they will. Who knows? Susan Chapel, why does JPMorgan buy a lot of silver? Well, Susan, as I said many times before, they might be buying some for themselves, but they also have a lot of clients they could be buying for their clients. So I don't know. But yeah, that's the other interesting thing I saw. I recommend this article on King World News, and I'll put the link here. It says, major alert, first time in 17 years, commercials long gold plus a silver shocker. It's the first time in 24 years that, the commercials have become long silver. So usually the commercials are the bullion banks, and they're always short. So this is another interesting read on King World News here. Paul Democrito, Monaco, true, but you tried moving 100,000 physical borders. Yeah, silver is a lot harder to move. That's true. During the Weimar Republic, hyperinflation, gold towards the end, at the tail end of the hyperinflation, outperformed silver because silver is too bulky to carry. But prior to hyperinflation, silver does outperform. You're right about in a hyperinflationary scenario, Paul. Derek Barwise, don't know about you, but the markets seem really skewed at the moment, more than ever. Up is down, down is up. Do you think we may be easing an end game before this year is out? Well, Alex Jones, if you go on Infowars.com, I recommend you guys go there. Don't usually talk about him, but he's got a report he did yesterday, Saturday, and he talks about he thinks the deep state wants to get rid of Trump either through winning the midterms, the Democrats, and then they'll because Trump apparently said that if the Democrats do well in the midterms and they win the Congress, he's going to be impeached. He thinks they want to get rid of him, and I think it was Lindsey Williams who said that as long as Trump was in power, the stock market would do well because they knew that if they collapsed the system, Trump would not bail them out. But once Trump is out, watch out. And why would they want to collapse the system? Well, so they can bail out the banks and buy everything cheap on the dollar. But if they collapse the system with Trump in charge, Trump is not going to save these people. So that's something to keep an eye on. But button banger, should there be a new currency based on precious metals? I think the market should decide. Of course, our masters or the establishment will have to say something about that. Cryptocurrency could be, is challenging them, but the thing is, they might not have a choice than to go back to precious metals, because if confidence is completely lost in the fiat money system, they'll have to revert back to the money that has the track record of thousands of years. Comic Commando Mario, are you as concerned as I am about the big tech companies' censorship and violence, like in Brazil, for people running to buck the corruption? Yeah, I am. I said earlier in this live stream that big tech seems to be in bed with the deep state. I mean, listen to Alex Jones. He did a press conference at the U.S. Congress, because he's saying that he's asked to be in all these hearings about tech censorship. He's written to the committees, and they never invite him, and they keep lying about him in these hearings. So yeah, it is concerning. Right now, I am not being censored. My videos are being monetized, which is nice. I can still do live streams, mostly because I talk more about market economics and money, but politics and markets sometimes, are linked. So yeah, I am concerned. The Buddha, do you think the emerging market currencies will be stabilized? They'll try to, but I think it's going to be difficult. And I'm not sure, these emerging market countries should go to the IMF for help. We'll see. It doesn't look very good. We'll have to see what happens in Brazil tomorrow with the real. I think on Friday, the market in Brazil was closed because it was Independence Day in Brazil, September 7th. And that's the day that candidate got stabbed. So yeah, I'm not sure they'll be able to contain the emerging market currencies. Patrick, let's see. High voltage. When Italy reset to the euro, they were 50%, 100% poorer the next day. Government said everything would remain the same. Yeah, I mean, the euro has benefited Germany, I think, the most. Susan Chappell, why wasn't there hyperinflation after the Depression? Well, because the Depression was a deflationary event. All the banks collapsed. And at the time, it wasn't as easy. The US was in the gold standard. They couldn't really print the money. It was only after in 1933, when Roosevelt banned the ownership of gold, had the bank holiday, and then he reinflated the system in 1934 by devaluing the dollar. Kathleen Smith, half the country loves Trump. If they impeach him, there will be trouble. Probably, yeah. Alex Jones seems to think it could be something worse than impeachment, and I won't mention it here. You probably can figure it out yourself. Trentram is here. You see, Trentram, it was me who posted that thing on the Facebook page. Is Deutsche Bank controlling the price of gold and silver? No, I don't think it's Deutsche Bank. I think it's more the American banks, the British banks, the Bank for International Settlements. They do a lot of intervention. I think they are the top, the Bank for International Settlements, because they are the banker for the central banks. Deutsche Bank, I don't think they're too involved in it. Paul Democritus, if they try to impeach Trump, he would cause a war or legalize Bitcoin. Well, it wouldn't be pretty. So we've got quite a few people here, almost 200, 187. Oliver Bristow, what measure of money supply, M2, M3, etc., is best to compare potential crypto market cap? Well, the thing is that I think they've, years ago, they stopped publishing M3, and I think they've even stopped publishing M2. So I'm not too sure. TNT TV, Mary, do you think that if we make it past 2018 without significant financial disturbance, do you believe they will keep it going till 2020 election? Well, if you think about it, we're almost at the midterm elections, so maybe it will start right now, and then by the time we get to 2020, the the mess or the financial collapse will have cleared. But I made a video yesterday talking about how the average post-war economic expansion is 7.6 years, and June 2019 will mark the 10th year of the present expansion. So we are due for a recession or some kind of economic or financial trouble. Gigsrow Uwe, how much does it cost to be in a golf club in the UK? Well, it depends on on the golf club. Anywhere from £800 a year to 10,000 if you go to an exclusive club. But when people ask me that question, I tell them, if you smoke a pack of cigarettes a day, it costs you 3 times as much than to be a member of a golf club. So it's all a matter of priorities. Yeah, so it's a lot more expensive to smoke, and there's still a lot of people smoking. Top of the morning to you, from Chief Fleet Chieftain. Chief Fleet Chieftain, I don't think Alex Jones is a tinfoil hat wearing nut job. I've been following him for over 15 years, and a lot of the things he said is turning out to be true. Yeah, so I don't think so. He can act a little bit bombastic and enthusiastic and aggressive, but that's the way he is. That still doesn't take away from the fact that he comes out with a lot of truth. AG Monster powers, the powers that be like to act on dates are numerically significant. That's true, I guess. Paul Democrito asking about Bitcoin. Yeah, I don't think I think it takes I said it in the beginning of the year when Bitcoin dropped a lot that it was going to take longer than people thought for this correction to end, and then for the market to make new highs. So it could be a while longer. There are people who are talking about Bitcoin making new highs before the end of the year. I'm not too sure, but you never know. Bitcoin can move. Cryptocurrencies can move like mad. Very volatile. Let's try to get some people. I haven't. Trump's message to get prepared was at the same time a hurricane was making landfall. Yeah, I mean, that's what David Janda said in his interview with Greg Hunter this Sunday. You can watch it. He said that's true. There's always September, there's a lot of hurricanes, but he thinks it's different this year because there are other things that Trump did this year that makes him think that there could be some kind of national emergency, more of a political and rule of law than natural. Jane Reynolds, thumbs up for Mary, please, everyone. Thanks, Jane. Daniel Hugh, Who? Hugh. Sweden will go right now. Illegal immigrants are draining generations of wealth from the citizens. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what they're thinking, the Swedish establishment, when they with their policy. I guess the results will be out tomorrow. I'm not sure when. Bambio Na, hi, I'm still a student in Ghana. I wish you could help me get free ebook or book of the Tower of Basel you spoke about. I'm learning so much from your channel than in school. More. Well, just Google the Tower of Basel free PDF. Just Google that, and that's how you might find it. Uh, uh, well, very difficult to pronounce your name there. KAZPLM. Precious metals will not be available to the public once it all kicks off. Get some now if you don't have. Yeah, I've heard from people here in the UK that they're actually paying almost £20 per ounce, including VAT and the premium. So yeah, the prices have gone down, not because people are out there, queuing to sell their silver. So yeah, it's going to be very difficult to get any. Danny Djokovic, late deliveries by SD Bullion and even other places that sell precious metals. Lisa Murphy, how can anyone support Trump when he's in bed with the military-industrial complex? And what about the increase in government spending? Is just as useless poll like them, all of them. Yeah, I've said that before, but the thing is not as clear as that, is it? Because there's factions within the military-industrial complex. But I know what you mean, Lisa. It's all very complicated right now. It could be all theater. I don't know. It could be all theater so that they can bring the system down and have an excuse. And that's why I say, try to maybe ignore all these things and keep your eye on the ball, i.e., on on your affairs, and try to live within your means and try to be your own central bank. Julivius, your opinion. People on YouTube are talking about economic collapse, while here in the Netherlands, the media is talking about economic boom. How is this possible? Well, I haven't, it's the same thing here. The mainstream media is in bed with the establishment and the banks, and they buy into all these statistics. I think it's for you to know, to see. I'm not sure about the situation in the Netherlands, but here in the UK, they keep saying that unemployment is at 50-year lows, but it doesn't feel like that when you go out outside in the high street or main street, and all the shops are closing down, and people are, I was reading the other day that I think a huge percentage of people are having trouble paying their monthly bills. Some of them are can't afford to pay all their bills. After they get paid, they have to go into debt. I think the mainstream media, they buy into these things. Maybe, and I also Donald Trump, he's using that as well, I think, to how can I say, to improve his standing. I don't really think unemployment is as good as we're told. 3.8%. There's still 96 million people out of the workforce. But yeah, I don't know about the Netherlands. You could be in better shape though. That's why I don't watch the mainstream media, Javelius. Uh, cool stuff. Hi, cool stuff. House price. House prices in the Netherlands are at the top right now. Yeah, I spoke about housing yesterday in my video. It looks like in London it's starting to come off quite a bit. Australia as well. So once the dollar loses confidence, what does it have? Nothing. Well, fiat money, I think it was Voltaire who said that all fiat money reverts to its original value, which is zero. High voltage politics is the entertainment division of the military industrial complex. Frank Zappa, yeah, he was an interesting guy. Yeah, I think it's just like a theater for the public to believe that they're in charge. And you might not agree with me, but I think by voting, people legitimize these politicians. I think the best thing would be for everyone to boycott elections. Then they'd have to think again how they act because they'd have no legitimacy. These nuts, yeah, the paper has some value, toilet paper. What's your dog's name? Billy. He just jumped off the sofa. I think he wants to go out because I've shut the door to the study. Yeah, Frank Zappa. I've listened to some of his videos on YouTube. I'd never realized that he was so awake, or as people call it, woke. Not none of your business. I'm a small business owner. My business this year is not even 1/8 of what it was last year. Has decreased significantly. Yeah, that's the economic boom, Nanya. Oh, CAS, U.S. just hit Syria with white phosphorus. Should make for an interesting week ahead. Definitely. Definitely. I haven't seen that news. I've been here with you guys. None of business in St. Louis, U.S., St. Louis, Missouri, the show me state. I think Bitcoin Ben is from Missouri, isn't he, as well? Julevius in the Netherlands, they're saying the same thing. Unemployment low. We even in risk of most jobs can't be filled because of a shortage of people. Kathleen Smith, have you ever seen the Norman Dodd? Yeah, that interview. I love that interview. I've watched that many times over the years. Yeah, Norman Dodd. I recommend everyone Google Norman Dodd interview on tax exempt foundations. That opened my eyes to a lot of things. He's been interviewed, I think, in the early 80s by a young G. Edward Griffin. Cool stuff. Thanks, cool stuff. Lisa Murphy, see, Trump's doing what the warmongers want. Well, he might not have a choice. But yeah, as I said, it's all complicated. Maybe that's why the mint, as I said, stopped selling silver because they knew they're going to go into war. There you go. Capitalism. to be honest, Ireland will probably be the last to leave the EU. I saw a video, I think, that popped up on YouTube from RT. It's called Irexit. So apparently there's a new movement in Ireland to leave the EU. Irexit. Silver, silver, silver. All right. I don't know if any of you people seen a video I made last summer. It's actually the video that I have the most views, 155,000 views, and I never expected to even get 1,000 views. It was a video entitled "How I Reverse Type 2 Diabetes Without Medication," and I have to go every year for a blood test to see, if things are okay. And I did that last week, and I was told that the test was fine. So I'll be coming out with a part 2 of that video next week after I've seen I've seen the GP and talk about the results. So that's even though I talk more about money, economics, and markets, that video has got 155,000 views. So yeah, if you want to watch it, you just search it on my YouTube channel, How I Reverse Type 2 Diabetes. Kirsten Strand, lots of Austrians on Out Media. Kaz, 92% in favor of EU and Ireland. Poor sods. Yeah, it's ironic because they didn't want to be under the rule of the British, the Irish, under control from London in 1920. They became independent, and now they're okay being under the thumb of Brussels. There you have it. Yeah, Kirsten, healthy diet and also exercise, but healthy diet also means, cutting down the carbohydrates as well. I used to think that eating cereal was healthy, but it's not. Cereal has a lot of carbs. Can you give us a house tour? Well, I'm doing this on my PC, so it's quite big. I can't walk around. But I've done one of these live streams in the living room. I don't know if you've seen that. You can have a look on my channel. Danny Djokovic, why does Montenegro use the euro when they aren't even part of the European Union? Well, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to be part of the European Union to use the euro. Like Panama uses the US dollar. Probably because, they don't have like a credible currency. So not that the euro is credible. So, I mean, the US could use the euro. There's nothing, if you earn euros, you can use it. Yeah. I don't know. Are you based in Montenegro? They might even use dollars as well, but euros, yeah. There's nothing that says if Montenegro law doesn't have its own. I don't know what if they have their own currency, but Europeans wouldn't. The EU wouldn't stop people from using the euro if they wanted to use it. Like in Brazil, a lot of people still use dollars sometimes, even though it's not the official currency. Credible currency equal oxymoron. Yeah, that's what Franz Pick says. But even if there is a reset and they bring back so-called sound money and they still have a currency, a national currency, he says that the most certain thing after that, even when they bring back sound money after a crisis, the most certain thing is that money is going to devalue. Unless you go back to 100% gold and just coins and silver, there will always be devaluation. All eyes on me, AA. Do you recommend buying coins that hold a premium, or just buy bars when stacking gold? No, I think if you're a multi-billionaire or a millionaire, you should you buy bars. But if you're buying a few $1,000s or more of gold, I recommend coins. Even the tenth of an ounce coins are good. Gold coins, half an ounce. There are tenth of an ounce Krugerrands. There are 1/20th of an ounce maple leaves. Uh, yeah, bars. I guess if you're buying $10,000 worth, you can buy some 50-gram bars. But I don't recommend a kilo bar unless, as I said, you are a multi millionaire, and you can buy even that 400-ounce bar that looks like a brick. But premium on coins change constantly. I'm not sure what the premiums are right now, but yeah. Tampa David, thank you for the super chat donation. Junk silver is good as well. I've been buying a few British sterling silver coins. I've got here a shilling, which is almost like a silver quarter. Yeah, the maple leaves are nice. The 1 ounce maple leaves. Uh, Kaz, with the gold silver ratio 84, will gold come down to meet silver or vice versa? Usually, when the ratio comes down is when precious metals are going up. So it would be gold going up, but silver going up quicker. Giggs wrote, Uli, feudal lords got so big that they had to conceal themselves at some point to creation of the political process. That's how democracy came about. Yeah, I actually that's something I've been thinking about. I think democracy and fiat money are one of the biggest, how can I say, popular delusions of the last 100 years. I, I think a republic, where the individual is respected and protected, is a lot better than democracy, because democracy you get 50.1% of the vote, and you can take a lot of property from the rest or from everyone. So I think democracy is is overrated, and it only works with fiat money. It works better with fiat monies because then it's a mechanism of extracting wealth from the general public, and you only need 50.1% of the votes for that. In the republic, people vote as well, but I think there is more care to try to protect the individual, and that's why I think the U.S. Constitution, it's unconstitutional to have an income tax in the U.S. It's an interesting subject. Marinesto, hi Mario. Where do you get those old silver coins from? I've bought, there is a coin dealer around where I live. I've known him for many years. There's not too many of them around. Or, a lot of times I just go on eBay to find them. Yeah, Kevin Johnson says America is a constitutional republic. I agree. And that's why I get annoyed when people call it a democracy. It's not, it should not, maybe it is a democracy now, but it should not be. Angelica, I saw that article about swine flu in China. I just saw the headline, so I haven't read it yet. I think the Chinese eat a lot of pork, though, so maybe buy pork bellies on the CBOT. uh, all eyes on me, double A. I mean, I do like numismatic coins, but I'm not a specialist. Oliver Bristol, Bastiat was right about democracy and government. Yeah, I mean, the state is the great fiction uh, in which, where people think that they can live at the expense of everyone else, isn't it? It's the great fiction. Yeah, The Law is one of my favorite books. I've recommended in loads of videos before. The Law by Frederick Bastiat, uh, a classic book. Kathleen Smith, interesting thing in Norman Dodd interview was the foundation's take over education. Yeah, and this is very true. That is why in the US, we're not taught proper history anymore. We're taught socialism. It's the same thing here in the UK. I think it's all over the world now. They've taken over the educational system. It's really, yeah, and they do it under the guise of, tax-free charitable foundations. It's amazing. But, you won't see schools or universities teaching about Norman Dodd. Red Snapper, hi, Red Snapper. Red Snapper, I haven't really been following uranium stocks. I have in the past, but not at the moment. Kathleen Smith, I tell my students when the devil comes, he comes as your friend and is here to help you, just like big government. I know. It's amazing how, most people accept that. Um, they, if you say, "Oh, we should have small government," they go, why? We need roads, we need schools, we need healthcare. And I said, we could do private enterprise could do all that. You don't need government. Government is very inefficient. But yeah, it's a great shame. Richard Langelotti, no need to replace the US Constitution is being circumvented and ignored 24/7, 365. I agree, unfortunately. And I think the judges are a lot to blame for it because they've been bought and paid for it by the corporations. I think it was in 2010, the Supreme Court ruled that corporations could give unlimited funding for political campaigns. At the time, I thought that was like a great crime, to be honest. All eyes on me. What will it take for the price of precious metal to go back to all-time highs? Do you see that even as a possibility? Yeah, I think it's very possible. Of course, with all the debt that's been creating, it will eventually go back to all-time highs and make new highs. And we could be, I know it's been said a lot before in these last few years, but I'll put a link to this article from Kingwell News on how the commercials, and the commercials are mainly the bullion banks. They, for the first time in more than a decade, they're they have long positions in gold and silver futures. So who knows? Langelotti, Scalia was a judicial hack. Jefferson would puke. David Wiseman, federal income tax was never ratified by individual states. Yeah, and you don't have to file, for, your income taxes. It's voluntary. But once you do file it, then you have to abide by the rules. rules. Yeah, Richard, that's what I've been hearing. Even though it's difficult to say uh, if they are getting rid of their position, and if it is their position. As I've said before, JPMorgan does a lot of business for clients, so you never know. But I recommend that King World News article. All the bullion banks combined are now long silver. That might still doesn't mean that JP Morgan is long, because they could be short and the other bullion banks are long more than they're short. But there's a good chance that they're now long JP Morgan. Bud McDonald, do you see a situation where silver remains permanently demonetized and only gold remains or returns to the monetary forefront? It's possible. Yeah, it's possible. Hopefully not. Uh, hopefully not. I mean, I think silver's been demonetized for about 50 years in Western Europe and the US. The US went off silver in 1964. A lot of European countries went off in 1968. The UK went off completely in 1947. Um, yeah, I think there is a chance if they go back to a gold standard, and we won't really have gold. Use it's only going to be gold held by unfortunately the government's hope, but you never know. The hope would be that we go back to gold and silver coinage. It might seem anachronistic these days, but I don't see why not. If we don't, it means that they win and we go to a cashless society. But it's still important to have physical gold and silver even in a cashless society. Kathleen Smith, what about social unrest? How much does this worry you? Here in the UK, not too worried, but I think for the US, it's a bigger problem. Uh, and maybe even in the UK, because if we do have a huge crisis, monetary crisis, it's something that we're not familiar with here in the UK for many years, nor in the US. Like South America, third world countries, they're used to it. So, but yeah, it is a concern. Full-time Geek, thanks for the super chat donation. Steam Monsters is the first collectible card game on the blockchain. Watch the Kickstarter videos for more details. Steam Monsters, I'll look into that. I've got quite a bit of Steam. I post all my videos on Steam and DTube. Buying silver in the UK, would you recommend silver coin as opposed to bars? I've got bars and coins. I don't think it matters for the capital gains. The thing about the capital gains, you only have to declare it if you make more than a certain amount. So what I would do is not sell it all at once if you do make a lot of capital gains. And that's why maybe coins are better, because if you just buy bars, it's going to be hard to like divide them. How will they set the value of metals in a reset? Well, it could be there are several different scenarios. It depends how much they want to back the monetary system by. If they back it by 50% of the money supply, the price might, depending on how much gold they have, price might be X. If they back it by 100%, it will be 2 times X, and so on. Richard Langelotti, what do you think about Elon Musk puffing a blunt on his interview and the stock dropping? Hilarious. To be honest, yeah, I've always not really I haven't really followed this guy that much. I know he makes these cars, electric cars. I don't really think he's that much of a, yeah, I think he's over hyped. So I'm not surprised it's all like kind of how can I say, going downhill for him. And I see Mercedes has come out with an electric car now as well. Mario, do you know anything about euro-dollar broken system? Do you mean the euro-dollar? Well, because originally the term euro-dollar comes from the 1960s. It was all the dollars that were abroad uh, and were traded in the London market. Well, the euro-dollar and the LIBOR, uh, London interbank offered rate is the market where they borrow and lend those euro dollars in London. Hence, LIBOR, London interbank. I think, yeah, that market's broken. They had the LIBOR scandal a few years ago, and they're not going to use that as a reference anymore. It's going to be a JPMorgan Federal Reserve. How can I say, a reference rate? And LIBOR is going to be phased out as a reference rate by 2021. But there will still be dollars traded in London and abroad. Is that what you were asking about, RR? Kevin Johnson, the free market would allow multi-gold cryptos, and people could choose the one they felt most trustworthy. That's right. I mean, there's already a card called Glint, which I have, is issued here, but in London, Glint Pay. If you look, GLINT, you can look at that. And they store their gold, their physical gold, in Switzerland. It's not a cryptocurrency, but it's a debit card that you can spend your gold on. The free market allows anything as long as it's not criminal. It should be, people should be able to try it, and it's what drives innovation. Good night, last December. Yeah, I've been here for 1 hour and 13 minutes. I'll do a few more questions. Well, I'll keep going. As tomorrow, I will do a video probably very early tomorrow, because I'm going to play golf quite early tomorrow. I didn't play today, but we're going away tomorrow to another course. So I'll probably do my video tomorrow around 7 a.m. London, which is quite early. Kathleen Smith, why not just forgive debt through QE for the people? Well, because the people are not part of the club. The bankers run things. They do QE for themselves. I know, that's the way it is. I think Jeremy Corbyn, and I don't agree with his politics. He's a socialist. He's talked about doing that. So I'll take a couple of more questions, and then I'll call it a night or a day, wherever you are. Will Brexit happen? I think it will happen in name, but it's questionable whether the UK will really be out of the EU. It doesn't look very good right now, all these negotiations and what's going on. Are people who have to work for currency and central banks, and banks can create it out of nothing. I know that's the that to me is the biggest crime that we have. I know there's a lot of other crimes people talk about, but that's the biggest thing, and that's why they don't teach about these things. And that's why I do my videos, because I think it needs to be how can I say, exposed. But if I try to call the fraud office in the UK and tell them that, do you really think they're gonna call the government and say you guys are doing this? The banks are doing this. They won't. Anders Orsted, hi Anders. Have you ever seen any of Kevin Shipp's video? He's an ex-CIA agent. It could be interesting to hear your view on his experiences. I just heard. I think it was David Janda or someone else just talked about Kevin Shipp. I haven't heard, but I will definitely listen to it. So I think it was David Janda was talking about him, that he's reliable. Kirsten Strand, do you think the EU will survive? The European Union? Well, if Italy leaves, then yeah, it's probably finished. If Italy and the UK are not in it. Oliver Bristol, the 1994 Yugoslav dinar was hyperinflated to hell within a month of inception. While Yugoslavia was falling apart around that time, wasn't it? EU will not survive. WK, yeah, I'm watching it. I paused it. I've watched 42 minutes of it. And when I finish this live stream, I'll go back to watching it. It's interesting. A lot of interesting things being said there. Ankle spanner. Yeah, I saw that Irexit, new EU anti-EU party formed in Dublin. Irexit. Okay, everyone. Thanks a lot for showing up for the live stream. I appreciate your presence, all the donations on Super Chat, and have a great rest of the weekend wherever you are, or it could be Monday already, like in Australia. So I'll talk to you guys later. Take care, and thanks a lot again. Bye.